Her boots carried dust of the fallen. But why did she walk into the room as if she had already lost? No one looked up when she entered the briefing tent. The air was heavy with diesel fumes and the faint tang of burnt coffee. Maps were pinned crooked on the canvas wall. Radios hissed and clicked with background chatter. But in that thick silence, her presence was nothing more than a shadow in the corner. They spoke around her, over her, through her like she wasn't there. She slid into the last empty chair, adjusting the strap of the worn rifle that rested across her chest. The wood was scratched, the barrel marked by years of use. It wasn't standard issue. It wasn't supposed to be here. And maybe that's why no one dared ask her about it. A cough broke the quiet. The lieutenant, barely older than she was, his jawline still smooth, cleared his throat and pointed at the red-circled sector on the map. "We move at dawn," he said. His voice trembled. He tried to hide it, but she caught it. She always caught it. Someone whispered, "She shouldn't be here." She heard that too. But she didn't flinch. She just kept her gaze steady on the map, memorizing the ridgelines, the valleys, the broken roads. Her mind worked faster than her heart wanted it to, because her heart wasn't in this tent. It was back where the ground still held the weight of the men she'd buried, men she wasn't supposed to care about, men they didn't even name anymore. She pressed her thumb into the rifle's grip, grounding herself. No one noticed. No one except the sergeant sitting across from her. He was older, grizzled, face like a road map of regrets. He didn't speak much, but his eyes lingered on her longer than the others, not with trust, not with respect, with a kind of weary calculation, like he was asking himself a question he didn't want the answer to. When the briefing ended, the men shuffled out in twos and threes. Laughter, cigarettes, boots scuffing in the dirt. She waited until the tent emptied. Only then did she stand. Only then did she allow her shoulders to sag for half a second, just half a second. Then she pulled them back, spine straight, eyes forward. The sergeant's voice stopped her. "That rifle, where'd you get it?" Her lips parted, but no sound came. She thought of telling him the truth. Thought of telling him about the night fire, the screams, the desperate last stand where one man pressed the weapon into her hands before the world turned to ash. But her throat closed. The story wasn't ready to be told. Not yet. Instead, she said quietly, "It was given to me." The sergeant studied her. The silence stretched too long. Then he nodded once, as if he understood something she didn't. She walked out before he could ask more. The camp was alive in its restless way. Generators hummed. Someone strummed a broken guitar, strings out of tune. Helicopters thumped overhead, the sound vibrating through her chest like an old memory that refused to fade. Dust rose with every step she took, clinging to her boots, the same boots that had crossed ground no one here dared to speak about. She paused at the fence line, eyes tracing the horizon. The mountains looked painted, purple and jagged against the dimming sky. The world out there was cruel, but it was honest. Out there, nothing pretended. Out there, truth bled through every stone and shadow. A young private jogged past, nearly bumping into her. He muttered an apology without looking her in the eye. She watched him go, his uniform too big, helmet loose. Just a boy playing at war. She remembered another boy like him. She remembered the sound his body made when it hit the ground. She remembered how they left him behind because they had no choice. Her hand gripped the fence tighter. The sergeant's voice echoed in her mind. "Where'd you get it?" She closed her eyes. The answer pulsed inside her chest, heavier than the rifle itself. She could still see the face of the man who had given it to her, his laugh, his impossible courage, his last words. She hadn't told anyone, not yet, because the moment she spoke them aloud they'd become real, final, irreversible. And she wasn't ready. A horn blared from the motor pool. Engines rumbled to life. Tomorrow they would head out. Another mission. Another line on a map. Another gamble with lives they couldn't afford to lose. Her breath slowed. Her heartbeat steadied. She wasn't here to be liked. She wasn't here to be seen. She was here because someone's dream had to survive, even if the dreamer hadn't. A soft wind carried dust across the yard, catching the sunset's fire. It clung to her boots, just like it had clung to the graves. She whispered under her breath, words no one else would hear, words she carried for the dead. Then she turned, walked back toward the barracks, and disappeared into the hum of the camp. But what she hadn't told them, not yet, was that this mission wasn't just another order to her. It was the same valley where everything had been lost, the same ridgeline where she had made a promise she couldn't break. And tomorrow, the dust on her boots would carry her back there. The night before deployment is never quiet. Engines hummed low in the dark, shadows moving like restless spirits between rows of vehicles. Men cleaned their rifles, checked and rechecked gear that already weighed too much. Cigarette smoke drifted through the camp, its glow flickering like fireflies against the canvas walls. Laughter rang out in one corner, sharp and forced, the kind that tried to chase away fear but only made it echo louder. She sat on the edge of her cot, boots planted firm on the floor. Her hands worked the bolt of her rifle with mechanical precision, slide, check, release, repeat. She didn't need to. It was muscle memory by now. But repetition was safer than thought. Thought had a way of breaking her open. Outside, the desert wind howled against the tin roofs, carrying with it the scent of oil and dust. It seeped into everything, even her lungs. She tried to breathe past it, slow, steady, but her chest felt tight. The sergeant's voice came from the doorway. "You're still up." She didn't answer right away. She kept her eyes on the rifle, running her thumb across the worn steel as if it were some kind of anchor. Finally she said, "So are you." He stepped inside, boots heavy, shoulders hunched under a weight she knew wasn't just the gear on his vest. He lowered himself onto the cot across from hers, joints stiff, groaning softly like wood under strain. For a long moment he didn't speak. He just watched her. "You ever think about what happens if you don't come back?" he asked finally. She paused, bolt halfway drawn. The question wasn't casual, it wasn't even curious. It was raw, unarmored. Her voice was soft, every night. The sergeant leaned forward, elbows on his knees, rubbing his hands together. His knuckles were scarred, skin rough and cracked. "I used to tell myself I'd make it home, no matter what, like I could just will it into existence. But then, after a while, you stop promising yourself. You just start promising the ones you leave behind." His eyes dropped, voice thinning. "My boy's 6 now. Last time I saw him, he was still calling me Daddy. Now I don't even know if he remembers the sound of my voice." The silence stretched. She swallowed hard. She wanted to tell him she understood. Wanted to say she knew what it was like to love someone and wonder if your absence would erase you from their memory. But the words stuck. Because her story wasn't the same. Because the one she had promised wasn't waiting for her anymore. Instead, she asked, "What's his name?" The sergeant looked up. Surprise flickered across his tired face, followed by something softer. "Ethan," he said. "He likes planes, says he's gonna fly one day." She nodded once, committing the name to memory. Ethan, a boy who loved planes, a boy who was waiting for a father who carried too much death in his eyes. She slid the bolt forward with a sharp click. "Then you better make sure you come back," she said quietly. The sergeant let out a dry laugh. It wasn't joy, it wasn't even humor, just exhaustion dressed as sound. Easier said than done. He pushed himself up, joints popping again. At the door, he glanced back. "Whatever it is you're carrying, just make sure it doesn't get the rest of us killed." Then he was gone. Her hands stilled. The rifle lay heavy across her lap. She stared at the doorway long after his shadow disappeared. His words cut deeper than he knew. "Whatever it is you're carrying." Because she was carrying more than weight. She was carrying ghosts. She set the rifle down gently, almost reverently, then leaned back against the wall, eyes on the ceiling. Shadows flickered there, cast by the weak light of a lantern outside. They moved like smoke, like memory. She closed her eyes. and in the darkness she was back there again. The night the sky burned red, the crack of rifles echoing across the ridge, the screaming that never seemed to stop. She remembered the blood on her hands, hot and slick. She remembered the man pressing the rifle into her palms, his voice ragged but steady. "Don't let it end here," he had said. She hadn't answered. She couldn't. Her throat had been raw with smoke and grief. And then he was gone. Her fists clenched in the present, nails biting into her palms. She opened her eyes, blinking back the heat that threatened to spill. Not now. Not here. Instead, she stood, grabbing her gear. She needed air. Outside, the camp buzzed with nervous energy. Men sat in circles, talking too loudly, playing cards, trading stories they didn't want to forget. She passed them all silent, a shadow moving through noise. At the far edge of camp, she found the wire fence again. The night stretched endless beyond it, stars sharp and unblinking. She gripped the metal with both hands, forehead pressed against the cool steel. Her voice came out as a whisper, barely carried by the wind. "I'm not done, not yet." She didn't know if she was speaking to him, to herself, or to something greater. She just knew the words had to be said. A sound broke the stillness. Boots on gravel. She turned sharply, instinct drawing her hand to her sidearm. But it was only the young private, the one with the loose helmet. He froze when he saw her. "Sorry, ma'am. Didn't mean to," he trailed off, awkward, eyes darting anywhere but her face. She let her hand fall back to her side, exhaling. Couldn't sleep either. He shifted his weight, nodded. "First time outside the wire tomorrow. Don't think I'm built for this." Something in his honesty cut through her armor. She studied him, his boyish face pale under the starlight, fear written in every line of him. "What's your name?" she asked. "Collins," he said, his voice cracked slightly. "James Collins." She repeated it quietly. "Collins." He swallowed hard. "How do you do it? I mean, how do you walk out there knowing?" His voice faded. He couldn't finish the question. She looked past him, toward the horizon where the mountains slept. Her answer came slow, measured. "You don't think about surviving," she said. "You think about what you're carrying, who you're carrying. That's what keeps your legs moving." Collins frowned. "And if you've got no one?" Her chest tightened. She thought of graves, of promises, of voices silenced too soon. "Then you carry the ones who can't anymore," she said softly. Collins didn't reply, but his breathing steadied just a little. He gave a stiff nod, then shuffled back toward the barracks. She stayed at the fence, eyes fixed on the stars. Each one felt like a memory, a story, a name. She didn't know how long she stood there. Only that when the horn sounded at dawn, she was already awake, already lacing her boots. Boots that carried dust. Boots that would soon carry her back to the place where her heart had broken. And as the convoy engines roared to life, drowning the camp in thunder, she whispered the words again, steady this time. "I'm not done." The road ahead swallowed them in dust. But what no one knew, what she hadn't told a single soul, was that she had buried something out there in that valley. Something that mattered more than her own life. And tomorrow she intended to find it. The convoy rolled out before the sun had fully risen. Engines thundered against the stillness of dawn, shaking the earth, drowning out thought. Dust swirled in choking clouds, painting everything in shades of ochre and gray. Soldiers sat shoulder to shoulder in the armored trucks, their faces hidden under helmets, eyes fixed straight ahead. No one spoke. Words felt too fragile to survive in the noise. She sat near the back, her rifle resting across her knees. Her hands traced the scratches in the wood, each mark a memory she hadn't shared. Her gaze stayed on the horizon, where the mountains grew sharper with every passing mile. She knew these ridgelines, knew their shadows, their silence. She had walked them once before when her boots carried more hope than grief. Now they carried something heavier. The truck jolted over a rut, sending helmets knocking against steel walls. One of the men cursed. Another muttered a prayer under his breath. She stayed silent. Her heartbeat was steady, but her stomach coiled tight, as if bracing for something it already remembered. Across from her sat Collins, the young private. His helmet still slipped slightly to the side, though he kept tugging it back into place. His eyes darted around the cabin, landing on her for only a second before flicking away. His hands fidgeted in his lap, restless, betraying nerves he couldn't hide. She leaned closer, her voice cutting through the engine's roar just enough for him to hear. First time outside the wire. He nodded quickly. Yeah, his throat worked as he swallowed. Does it ever get easier? Her answer was slow, deliberate. No, you just learn to carry it. He frowned, brow creasing. Carry what? Her eyes dropped to the rifle. The weight. The sergeant, sitting near the door, shifted at her words. His gaze flicked to her, then to the weapon in her hands. He didn't speak, but she felt the unasked question hanging in the cramped space. Whose weight are you carrying? The convoy slowed suddenly. Brakes squealed. Dust plumed up in waves. Every soldier's head snapped to the windows. The mountains loomed closer now, jagged teeth biting into the pale sky. The road narrowed, flanked by steep cliffs and loose stone. Perfect ground for an ambush. The lieutenant's voice crackled over the radio. Stay sharp, eyes on ridges, no mistakes. Her grip tightened on the rifle. She scanned the slopes, shadows shifting in the rising sun. Every rock looked like it could hide a threat. Every silence felt too long. Minutes stretched. No gunfire, no movement. Just the convoy grinding forward, engines echoing against stone walls. But her chest told her otherwise. She could feel it. The memory pressed in the last time she had come through this pass. That night had been different. No engines, just footsteps hurried and uneven. No convoy, just a handful of them moving on foot trying to vanish into the terrain. She had heard the first shot before she even knew where it came from. A flash on the ridge, a scream beside her, and then the world had erupted. Her throat closed. She forced her eyes back to the present, forced her breathing even. The sergeant leaned close, his voice a low growl meant only for her. You've been here before. It wasn't a question. Her jaw tightened, she didn't answer. The truck jolted again, pulling them forward. At last the convoy cleared the pass, rolling out into a wide valley. The air shifted quieter, emptier. The horizon stretched endless, but her eyes locked on one place. A rise of earth in the distance. Barely a hill, forgettable to anyone else. But to her it was the weight of the world. Her chest constricted. The truck rattled past. She forced her gaze away. Not yet, not in front of them. The convoy halted near a cluster of abandoned buildings, concrete shells left to crumble in the sun. Doors hung loose on rusted hinges. Windows were just black holes staring outward. Out, the lieutenant barked. Boots hit dirt, weapons readied. The air grew thick with the smell of metal, fuel, and nerves. She slung her rifle across her shoulder, scanning the broken structures. Each shadow felt alive. Each silence carried a question. Collins stumbled slightly as he climbed down, his pack heavier than his frame seemed built for. She steadied him without a word, her hand firm on his arm. His eyes flicked to hers, gratitude unspoken but visible. The sergeant ordered teams to spread, sweeping the buildings. Shouts echoed, boots thudded against cracked concrete. Birds scattered from the rooftops, wings beating frantic against the sky. She stayed near the edge of the group, eyes drifting back toward the valley, toward the hill. Her throat ached with the words she hadn't said. Because buried beneath that rise was more than soil. Buried there was the moment everything had changed. The sergeant returned, dust clinging to his vest. Clear, he said, though his voice held no relief. The lieutenant started rattling off instructions, assigning sectors, establishing watch posts. His tone was sharp, rehearsed, but his eyes betrayed him. He was young, too young, and fear threaded through every syllable. No one challenged him. Orders were orders. But she barely heard. Her pulse drummed in her ears, louder than his voice. Her gaze stayed locked on the horizon. The sergeant followed it, his eyes narrowed. Something out there. She forced herself to shake her head, just watching. But the truth clawed at her. She wasn't watching, she was remembering. Night fire, voices cut short, the man pressing the rifle into her hands. His last words, "Don't let it end here." And she hadn't, not yet. Her boots shifted in the dirt, dust clinging as if the ground itself remembered. She told herself she'd wait until the mission was done, wait until eyes weren't on her. But the pull was stronger with every breath, stronger than orders, stronger than reason. Because somewhere under that hill was a piece of her that had never left. The sun dipped lower, shadows stretching across the valley. Men adjusted their gear, joked too loudly, tried to pretend this place wasn't pressing in on them. Collins sat nearby, scribbling something in a small notebook he thought no one noticed. His lips moved faintly like he was reciting words under his breath. Maybe a prayer. Maybe a letter he couldn't write any other way. She watched him for a moment, watched the boy try to make himself into a soldier, and she remembered the last boy she had watched do the same. Her chest ached. The sergeant lit a cigarette, smoke curling in the fading light. He caught her staring at the horizon again. "You're not telling me something," he said. She met his eyes. For a moment she almost broke, almost let the truth spill into the dust between them. But then the lieutenant barked another order, and the moment passed. She turned away, her voice steady, controlled. "Not yet." The sergeant studied her, his face hardened, but he didn't press. The valley swallowed the sun, shadows deepening. Night crept in, slow and heavy. And as the camp settled into uneasy silence, she lay awake, boots still on, rifle within reach. Because tomorrow she would go to that hill. No matter the orders, no matter the risk. Because her boots carried the dust of the fallen, and her heart carried the fire of their dream. And until she stood on that ground again, she would not rest. The valley at night was never silent. Wind hissed through broken windows, rattling glass shards still clinging to rusted frames. Metal creaked somewhere in the dark, the groan of an old roof settling under its own weight. And above it all, the endless chorus of insects sang, sharp and unrelenting. But beneath those sounds there was something else, a silence that felt intentional, watchful. She lay on her back, boots still on, rifle across her chest. Her eyes traced the cracked ceiling, following the jagged lines like a map. Sleep would not come. It never did in this place. Not here, not where the earth still remembered. The sergeant sat near the doorway, cigarette glowing faint against the dark. He wasn't asleep either. He never was. Smoke curled in thin ribbons around his head, catching the faint glint of moonlight. Collins shifted on his cot, restless, muttering under his breath. She caught fragments of words, names, maybe, or pieces of prayers. His notebook was tucked under his pillow, edges worn soft from too many times folded and unfolded. The lieutenant snored in the next room, sharp and uneven, betraying nerves his posture tried to hide in daylight. His radio lay within reach, its static whispering low, like a ghost trying to form words. She closed her eyes, and in the dark the past crept closer. The same valley, different night, different faces. She heard their laughter again, rough and unguarded, around a fire that burned too bright. She remembered how the stars had looked that night, endless, mocking, indifferent. She remembered the weight of her pack, the ache in her shoulders, the way exhaustion had softened their guard. And then the first shot. She flinched. Her eyes flew open, dragging her back into the present. The sergeant noticed. He didn't speak, just flicked ash from his cigarette, his gaze never leaving the darkness beyond the door. She sat up, rifle steady in her grip. The valley pressed in, heavy like it knew her bones, like it was waiting for her to break. Footsteps approached outside, slow, careful. She froze. The sergeant's hand went to his sidearm. His eyes narrowed. The steps stopped just beyond the threshold. Then a voice, low, urgent, one of their own, posted on the outer watch. "All clear," the soldier whispered, but his tone carried weight, as if he was trying to convince himself. The sergeant exhaled, leaning back slightly. She didn't. Her heartbeat stayed sharp, quick, because all clear never meant safe. Not here. Not in the valley. When dawn broke, the camp stirred into motion. Engines coughed awake, men strapped on gear checked weapons. Dust rose with every step, painting them in shades of earth. The lieutenant rattled off assignments, his voice sharper than it had been yesterday, as if he could hold fear at bay by speaking louder. No one questioned him. Orders filled the space where silence might otherwise speak too loudly. She moved through the motions with practiced calm, but her gaze kept drifting toward the hill, that rise of earth in the distance. Small, unremarkable to anyone else. To her, it was everything. Her chest tightened with the weight of it. Collins noticed. He followed her gaze, frowning. "What's out there?" She turned to him. His eyes were wide, uncertain. Still a boy, still learning how to carry the rifle slung across his chest. "Nothing you need to worry about," she said softly. But her voice didn't convince even herself. The sergeant approached, dust clinging to his boots, jaw set hard. His eyes followed hers to the horizon. "You keep looking at that hill," he said quietly. Her throat tightened. "Do I?" "You do," he said. He paused, lowering his voice further. "What is it?" She hesitated. The truth pressed at her lips, heavy, desperate to be freed. But once spoken, there would be no taking it back. Instead, she shook her head. "Just a hill." The sergeant didn't believe her. She could see it in the lines of his face. But he didn't push. Not yet. Orders came down. Patrols split off, fanning into the broken village. Boots echoed in empty streets. Rifles scanned shattered doorways. The air was thick with dust and echoes. She walked point with Collins at her side, his breath loud in the silence. His grip on his rifle was too tight, his knuckles white. He tried to hide the tremor in his hands, but she saw it. "Slow it down," she whispered. He glanced at her. "What?" "You're breathing," she said. "Slow it down, in through the nose, out through the mouth. Match your steps." He did as she said, halting at first, then steadier. His shoulders eased fractionally. "Better," she murmured. For a moment, his eyes flickered with something, gratitude maybe, or the desperate hope that someone might actually believe he could survive this. They turned a corner. A door hung loose, swaying with the wind. Collins froze. Her hand shot out, steadying him. She signaled with 2 fingers, then advanced. Her boot brushed the threshold, eyes scanning every shadow. Inside, only silence, dust, a child's shoe in the corner, worn and forgotten. Her chest tightened. She stepped back, motioning Collins to move on. They rejoined the others near the center of the village. The lieutenant was barking into his radio, frustration bleeding through his words. "Command says we hold here until further orders." The men muttered under their breath. No one liked waiting in the open. Waiting was death in places like this. She said nothing. She just looked back toward the hill. The sergeant caught her again. This time his eyes were harder, demanding. But before he could speak, a crack split the silence. A shot. It echoed through the valley, sharp and final. Everyone dropped, rifles snapping to shoulders, eyes scouring rooftops, ridges, windows. Heartbeats thundered louder than the engines. "Silence!" The lieutenant shouted, voice cracking. "Contact, eyes up, find him." But she knew better. That shot wasn't random. It wasn't a warning. It was a reminder. The valley hadn't forgotten. Her pulse raced, breath sharp in her throat. She looked at the hill again, that rise of earth. Her stomach twisted. Because if the valley remembered, then so did they. The sergeant crouched beside her, voice low, urgent. "What the hell going on?" She didn't answer. She couldn't, not yet. Her boots dug into the dirt. Dust clung to the laces. rising with every tremble of her breath. She had promised herself she wouldn't go back to that hill until the mission was done, until it was safe. But promises were fragile here, and the valley didn't forgive. Why did the silence of the village feel louder than the battlefield she had walked through? The kind of silence that didn't just swallow sound, it pressed against her chest, heavier than body armor, harder than the recoil of a rifle. She moved slowly through what had once been a market square. The air smelled of ash and faint sweetness, like fruit left too long under a ruined awning. Broken stalls leaned at odd angles, their canvas shredded. A child's shoe lay overturned near a well. The sight caught her, gripped her throat. She bent down, brushed dirt off its fabric, then set it gently on the stone ledge, as if the missing foot might still come back for it. Her boots crunched over glass. She forced herself forward. Each step carried weight not just of dust, but of the promise she had made, to remember, to carry, to not let their dreams die with them. Behind her, Corporal Ruiz muttered, "Feels like ghosts are still watching." "They are," she said softly. She didn't turn. "That's why we keep moving." But she hadn't told them yet, the thing that gnawed at her nights. Not just that she was searching for survivors, not just that she was holding onto a mission most had already written off. She was searching for someone specific, someone the files had listed as missing, someone whose name she hadn't said aloud in years. Her brother. He had deployed long before her. His letters had stopped coming. His photograph, creased, weathered, smudged with dirt, still lived in the inner pocket of her pack. She told no one, not the commander, not her team, not even Ruiz, who shared his stories about a son back home every night by the fire. The silence deepened as they reached the schoolhouse. Its walls bore bullet scars, plaster chipped away to expose wooden ribs. Desks were overturned, their legs snapped. A chalkboard still bore half-written words, smudged into gray streaks. She ran her fingers across the chalk, remembering classrooms, remembering when war was something far away, something she only read about. Now she was inside it. "Clear left," came the call. "Clear right." She nodded, though her eyes weren't on threats, they were on small things. A notebook with doodles, a cracked globe with continents faded pale, a scarf caught on a splinter of wood. She stuffed it into her pack, not evidence, not intel, just something human. They moved on, crossing alleys where shadows pooled. The air grew heavier. She kept replaying the same thought. If he's alive, would he recognize me? If he's gone, can I bear to find the proof? At dusk, they camped in the shell of a house. A roof half collapsed, walls painted with soot. She sat by the dim orange of a fire, pretending to clean her rifle. In truth, she traced the edges of that folded photo again, thumb brushing her brother's faded smile. Ruiz caught her staring at it. "Family?" he asked, his voice soft, careful. She slipped it back into her pack. "Just someone I used to know." Ruiz didn't press. He just leaned back, staring at the smoke curling up through the rafters. After a long pause, he whispered, "My boy, he wants to be a pilot, says he'll fly higher than I ever dreamed. I told him, don't be in a hurry, but kids don't listen." His words hung in the smoke. She nodded, but her throat burned. She thought of her own childhood, two kids running barefoot in fields, racing each other, daring each other. She thought of the way her brother used to say, "One day we'll wear the same boots, fight the same fight." Now maybe his boots were here too, somewhere in this soil. The night stretched long. Dreams tugged her into restless flashes, her brother's laugh, the sound of rotors overhead, the weight of earth being shoveled onto coffins. She woke sweating, gripping her rifle as if it could steady her. Morning broke gray. Mist coiled around the ruins like smoke reluctant to leave. They pushed onward, every street narrowing the space between her hope and her dread. By midday they reached the outskirts. A farmhouse stood at the edge of cracked fields. Its door hung loose, swinging with the wind. She motioned for silence, hand raised. The team spread out, boots light, rifles steady. Inside, dust choked the air, broken furniture, a kettle rusted on a stove, and then footsteps faint upstairs. Her heart surged. She signaled up, rifle aimed, finger tense. They crept step by step, the stairs groaning under weight. At the top, nothing but a shutter clattering in the wind. Empty rooms, empty chairs, empty silence. But then under a bed, Ruiz spotted it. A pack, worn, dirt-stained, marked with a patch she knew instantly. Her breath hitched. That was the unit her brother had deployed with. Her knees buckled before she forced herself upright. She grabbed the pack, clutched it to her chest, and sat down hard on the floorboards. Inside, scraps, a knife, a cracked canteen, and a strip of cloth with initials sewn by hand. His initials. Her team watched her carefully, unsure of the storm behind her silence. She wanted to scream, to cry, to tear the world apart until it gave her an answer. Instead, she inhaled sharp, tucked the pack into hers, and stood. "Let's move," she said. Her voice didn't shake, it burned. They exited back into the fields, the sky turning amber. In the distance, smoke spiraled thin from another ridge, a signal, a survivor, or just another ruin. Every choice felt heavier now. Every step was a battle between faith and despair. But she pressed forward, boots carrying dust, heart carrying fire. And in the hush of dusk, she whispered under her breath, not to the team, not even to herself, but to the ghosts that walked with her. "I'll find you, one way or another." Why did the smoke ahead feel different from all the others? It wasn't thick like burning fuel or acrid like old ruins. It was thin, disciplined, steady, as if someone was tending it. Alive. She crouched low, raising a hand. The team froze. Silence stretched across the cracked field, broken only by a crow's wings. Her heart raced, but her breathing slowed. Every instinct told her this wasn't random. Someone was there. They advanced cautiously, weaving between the remains of stone fences and wild brush. The closer they came, the clearer it became. A small fire pit hidden in a hollow near the ridge. Fresh, still warm. Whoever lit it had left minutes ago or was watching. She scanned the horizon. No movement, just wind stirring tall grass, but something inside her pulsed. This means someone survived, maybe him. Ruiz whispered, "Tracks, 2, maybe 3 sets, headed east." His fingers brushed the dirt, tracing impressions. "How fresh?" she asked. "Couple hours less." Her pulse quickened. She gripped her rifle tighter. She wanted to sprint, to chase, to throw every ounce of strength at closing that gap. But command whispered in her ear from memory, "Don't run at shadows. Shadows pull you in, make you vanish." She forced a nod. "We follow, but careful." They moved east, their boots sinking into soil where crops had once grown. The sun tilted lower, casting gold that made every ruin look almost alive again. For a moment, she imagined laughter echoing from farmhouses, children chasing dogs through tall grass. The vision hurt more than it healed. Half an hour later, the track split. 2 veered south, 1 continued east. Ruiz frowned. "Could be a trick." "Or a choice," she said. Her gut twisted. If she guessed wrong, she might lose him forever. But wasn't that always the choice, between paths you couldn't retrace? She crouched, touching the eastward trail. Smaller footprints, lighter weight, familiar gait. She didn't want to admit why it struck her so deep. How many times had she watched her brothers stride as they ran side by side? Something in her chest whispered, "This way." "We head east," she ordered. Ruiz hesitated, then nodded. "Your call." The trail led them into woods. Shadows thickened, air damp with moss. Branches cracked under boots. Every sound felt amplified. The forest seemed to breathe around them, watching. A twig snapped, not theirs. She swung her rifle up. The team froze, rifles scanning. Silence again. She waited, breath shallow, finger poised. Nothing, just leaves shifting high above. But she knew someone was close. They pressed on, nerves taut. The trail climbed a slope where the trees thinned. At the crest, the world opened. A view of a valley below, dotted with ruins and a thin river glinting like silver. Smoke curled from a shack near the water. Her chest tightened. There. They descended carefully. Halfway down, Ruiz muttered, "Feels too easy, like we're being led." She didn't answer. Maybe they were. Maybe that didn't matter. At the shack, the door hung ajar. She signaled the team into position. They breached fast, rifles raised, only to find emptiness. A table, a chair, a half-eaten loaf of bread, a tin cup still warm. She exhaled hard, a step too late. Then she saw it scratched into the wooden table. Letters, initials, the same as those sewn into the cloth she had found in the farmhouse. Her throat constricted. She touched the grooves with her fingers, fresh. Ruiz stared. "You know whose that is?" Her lips parted, but no words came. She wanted to scream yes. She wanted to say his name out loud, shatter the silence. Instead, she whispered, "Someone who mattered." The team fanned out, searching. Outside, dusk folded in. Wind swept across the river, carrying a sound faint but distinct, distant voices. She motioned sharp, urgent. They followed the river bend, rifles ready. Voices grew clearer, male, too, speaking low, foreign accents. They crept closer until the source emerged, two men hauling sacks into a boat, armed, alert, and beyond them on the bank a figure bound at the wrists, kneeling, head bowed. Her heart slammed against her ribs. From this distance she couldn't see the face, couldn't confirm, but something inside her screamed recognition. She held her fist up, freezing the team in place. Breath shallow, mind racing. She wanted to charge, to break the silence with fire and fury, but training anchored her. Recklessness could kill him. Ruiz whispered, "Orders." Her lips trembled before steadying. "We wait, watch." The men loaded the last sack. One laughed, harsh and guttural. He shoved the kneeling figure forward, closer to the boat. Her blood roared. Her finger tightened on the trigger. She could end it now, drop one, maybe both. But if she missed, if the wrong shot landed? She swallowed hard, pulse pounding in her ears. "Please let it be him, please." The bound figure lifted his head. The light caught his face. Dirty, gaunt, beard grown, but the shape, the eyes, her chest collapsed inward. It was him. Her vision blurred. For a split second, time fractured. She was a child again, chasing him through fields. She was a recruit, writing his name in letters that never got replies. She was here now, staring at the impossible. Her brother was alive. But the moment cracked as one of the men barked an order and shoved him harder toward the boat. Her choice narrowed to a knife's edge. Wait and risk losing him down the river. Act and risk losing him to a bullet. Her hands shook just barely. For the first time in years she felt afraid, not of dying but of failing him. She exhaled slow, centering her rifle. Shadows stretched long over the bank, water lapping gently, as if mocking the storm in her chest. Her finger brushed the trigger. The world held its breath. And then, what made her hesitate when she had trained her whole life to never flinch? Her finger hovered, the weight of the trigger begging for release. Yet her breath caught, because this wasn't just a target. This was blood. This was memory. This was the reason she wore the uniform at all. The man nearest the boat shoved her brother again. His knees buckled, splashing against the riverbank. Rage burned through her chest, sharp and uncontainable. Ruiz glanced at her, eyes wide, waiting for her call. Every second stretched thin. She exhaled, then squeezed. The shot cracked across the valley. The first man dropped instantly, his rifle clattering against the rocks. The second spun, shouting, reaching for his weapon. Ruiz fired. Another thud. Silence followed, broken only by the rush of the river. Her heart hammered so violently she thought it might burst. She scrambled forward before the echo had even faded, boots sliding down the bank. The bound figure, her brother, stared up, stunned, disbelief flooding his dirt-streaked face. She dropped to her knees, hands fumbling with the ropes at his wrists. Her breath came in sharp bursts, half sobs, half gasps. "It's me, it's—" the words fractured. Her throat locked. She pulled harder until the ropes tore free. His voice cracked, low, rasped with thirst. "I thought I'd never." "Don't," she whispered fiercely, gripping his shoulders. "Don't say it." His eyes, hollow yet burning, searched her face. For a long second neither spoke. Only the river moved, whispering past them. Behind them, Ruiz and the team scanned for threats, tense. But she was locked in that moment. Her entire world collapsed to the man before her. Her brother alive. She helped him to his feet. His body trembled, weak from hunger, captivity, God knew what else. But his spine straightened when he saw her uniform. "You came," he whispered. Her jaw clenched, tears brimming. "I never stopped." A gunshot cracked from the ridge. They dove to the ground. Dirt sprayed near her cheek. Ruiz shouted, returning fire. Shadows moved above 3, maybe 4 figures, rifles flashing. "Ambush," Ruiz barked. Adrenaline surged. She shoved her brother flat, covering him with her body. "Stay down," she hissed. The team fired back, bullets ripping bark, sparking stone. She rolled, raised her rifle, sighted fast. 1-2 fell screaming from the ridge. But more shots rained down. The air stank of gunpowder, ears ringing. Her brother clutched the earth, shaking. She glanced at him, fragile, vulnerable, and something inside her hardened. She wasn't losing him. Not now, not after all this. "Cover fire," she roared. The team unleashed a volley, spraying the ridge. She grabbed her brother's arm, dragging him toward the shack by the river. He stumbled, nearly fell. She yanked him up, strength drawn from sheer refusal to let him break. Inside they ducked low, breaths ragged. Bullets punched through the walls, splinters flew. Ruiz slid in beside them, cursing. "They're circling us." Her mind raced, trapped, outnumbered, brother too weak to run, but retreat wasn't an option, not anymore. She gritted her teeth. "We hold." The firing outside paused. Silence, heavy and waiting. Her brother's hand found hers, trembling. "You shouldn't have come," he whispered, voice breaking. She gripped back hard. "You're wrong, I couldn't not." Then came the sound, boots in mud, closing in. The door rattled under a kick, splinters cracked. She leveled her rifle, chest heaving. Time slowed again. When the door burst, the world became chaos. Shadows flooding in, flashes of muzzle fire lighting their faces, the room exploding with sound. She moved without thought, every shot precise, every motion fueled by something deeper than training. Ruiz dropped one. She dropped 2. But one figure lunged through the smoke, rifle raised at her brother. Her scream tore out raw as she fired point blank. The man collapsed at her feet. Her brother flinched, staring at the body. At her, at the fire in her eyes, he whispered, shaken, "You're not the sister I remember." She breathed hard, blood pounding. "No, I'm not, but I'm the one who came for you." The last of the attackers fell. Silence returned, thick, suffocating. Smoke hung in the air, mingling with the copper tang of blood. Her rifle lowered slowly, hands trembling now that it was over. She turned to him, chest tight. He looked fragile, pale, but alive, alive. Ruiz exhaled, leaning against the wall. "We need to move. More'll come." She nodded. She helped her brother up again, slipping his arm over her shoulders. Each step he leaned heavy, but she bore it. For once, she didn't mind the weight. As they stumbled out into the fading light, she felt it, the crushing relief, the fragile hope. But beneath it all lingered a truth she didn't say aloud. This wasn't the end. Finding him was only the beginning of another fight. And in the quiet between heartbeats, as they moved back into the wilderness, she whispered inside herself, "Please, let me keep him this time." Why did the night feel heavier now that she wasn't alone? For years, she had carried only ghosts. But walking beside her brother, leaning on her shoulder, every shadow seemed sharper, every sound closer. The weight of keeping him alive pressed harder than the weight of war ever had. The forest swallowed them in darkness. Branches clawed overhead, stars faint behind drifting clouds. Ruiz led point, scanning, rifle raised. The rest of the team staggered behind, silent, their breaths shallow. They were running on fumes on adrenaline stretched too thin, but no one dared complain, not after what they had just witnessed. Her brother's steps faltered again. She shifted, tightening her grip under his arm. "Stay with me," she whispered. "I'm trying," he rasped, voice raw, barely audible. "I'm not who I was." She bit back the surge of emotion, steadying him. "Neither am I, but we're still here." They reached a clearing where the moon spilled silver over broken stones. The silence was uncanny, too clean, too deliberate. Her skin prickled. She raised a hand. "Halt." Then it came, the low rumble. Engines approaching fast. Her stomach turned cold. She crouched, pulling her brother down with her. Across the trees, faint beams of headlights cut through branches. A convoy, too many, too close. Ruiz hissed, "We're boxed in." "Not yet," she said, scanning fast. The river, the slope, the trees. Every option burned with risk, but standing still was death. She leaned close to her brother, whispering in his ear, "Can you swim?" His eyes widened. "Not like this." "You don't have to, just hold on." The plan formed sharp, reckless, the kind born not from training but from desperation. She motioned to Ruiz. "We go for the river, now." The team exchanged looks, tight with doubt, but they trusted her, and in that trust lay something sacred. They sprinted. Branches whipped their faces, boots pounding mud. Shouts erupted behind them, voices giving chase. Gunfire cracked, tearing bark. The night ignited with chaos. She pushed harder, dragging her brother, her lungs burning. Bullets hissed past like angry wasps. One struck close, dirt blasting near her boots. She didn't stop, couldn't stop. The river glimmered ahead, black and cold. Without thinking, she plunged. Water swallowed them whole, icy teeth biting into her skin. Her brother gasped, choking. She wrapped an arm around him, kicking, dragging him with every ounce of strength left in her body. Above, tracers lit the sky, red streaks hissing. The river pulled them under, spun them, dragged them downstream. She surfaced, gasping, holding his head above water. He coughed, clung, his grip weak but refusing to let go. "Hold," she shouted over the roar, though she wasn't sure if he heard. Her arms ached, legs burning. But she kicked harder, driven by something deeper than survival, by the fire she had promised to carry. Minutes blurred, chaos faded. When at last they crawled onto the far bank, soaked and shivering, the forest across the river still echoed with shouts and gunfire. But here, only silence. Ruiz stumbled ashore, coughing hard. The team regrouped, faces pale, eyes wide. No one spoke. They were alive, barely. She rolled onto her back, chest heaving, staring at the stars. Her brother lay beside her, trembling, lips blue. She pulled him close, wrapping her arms around him, shielding him with her body. For the first time in years, she allowed herself to cry, not out of despair, but out of sheer, fragile relief. Hours later, dawn seeped into the trees, painting the world gold again. They moved slow, ragged, but forward. Each step was agony, yet each step was defiance. Her brother's voice broke the silence. "You shouldn't have risked all this, for me." She looked at him, eyes fierce despite exhaustion. "You don't get it. I wasn't risking it for you. I was risking it for who we were, for who we could still be." He stared at her, something raw breaking inside. His lips trembled. "I thought I was gone, that no one would remember me." She squeezed his hand, steady, certain. "Your name never left me. I carried it every step." The forest thinned. In the distance, the faint thrum of helicopter blades rose. Hope's sound, extraction. The team signaled. Flares fired. Smoke curled red against the sky. She held her brother tighter, almost afraid the sight of rescue would vanish if she blinked. When the helicopter descended, wind whipping grass flat, her brother shielded his face, eyes wide with disbelief. She leaned close, voice breaking into a whisper only he could hear. "This is real. You're going home." The crew pulled them aboard, hands steady, urgent. Inside the cabin, the roar was deafening. Yet for her, it was the sweetest sound. Her brother slumped against her, eyes closing, safe in her arms at last. She stared out the open door as the ground fell away. The river shimmered like a silver scar across the land. The ruins grew small, then vanished into distance. But the weight in her chest didn't vanish, because she knew this wasn't victory, it was survival, fragile, costly, precious. Her brother stirred, whispering faintly, "Why did you come, after everything?" She pressed her forehead to his, tears slipping free. Because boots carry dust of the fallen, but hearts, they carry fire, and I couldn't let that fire die. The words hung in the cabin's roar. Ruiz looked at her, then away, his jaw tight, eyes glistening. None of them spoke. They didn't need to. The helicopter lifted higher, sunlight spilling across their faces. For the first time in years, she let herself breathe, slow, deep, unshaken. Sometimes dignity doesn't speak, it simply acts. And in the hush that followed, with her brother safe beside her and the world stretched wide below, she closed her eyes and let silence say the rest.